Good morning. Glad to see the ones that are here. Almost said everyone, but that's not the case. This morning, we are honored to have Mr. Turner here to talk to us about the Commission on Veterans Affairs and the things that are taking place in his office. And that's always a exciting time for us on this committee. So with that and no more ado, Mr. Turner, podium is yours, sir.
You're good to go now, so I apologize. So thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all here this morning. I'm very honored to be able to have the ability to do this. My name is Bill Turner. I was recently appointed as the acting director for the Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs on 9 August. And as such, I've been going around now with our organization to kind of learn what I can about our organization, getting acclimated into the state government processes and systems, and trying to provide an assessment, if you will, to internally with our organizations. We can agree on an assessment of how we are doing operations, where we're at, where things that we are doing well, and then how do we go from there, and about maybe improving some of the processes to be able to optimize our capabilities that we possess. Whoops, I apologize. Before we go much further too, I'd like to thank you all for for all your service here, both here in the state and several of you that have affiliations with service members and also with direct service. Mr. Chair, I heard you earlier in one of your initial meetings here in the convening of the committee, and you were speaking about your position here and working, with General Dotson as a member of the committee. And you can imagine how humbling it is for me to have served directly under his command years ago, and now to have the opportunity to be here and to speak with him again. So this is quite an experience for me as well. If I may, I'd like to introduce two folks that are here with me today. One is our deputy at the Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs is Eric Rolder. Eric is a retired senior non-commissioned officer in the United States Air Force and has 10 plus years here now working with our commission. Many of you are probably already familiar with him, but his services, his guidance, and his mentorship to me here early on has been quite invaluable, helping me to get on board here with our organization. Also, Crystal Hewitt. Crystal is our Chief Fiscal Officer. Crystal came over to us from ks here the end of November. So she has just signed on to our organization, has tremendous experience with the state and working in a number of capacities, but most recently here with ks and the state hospitals. So she brings a wealth of knowledge and has an understanding of the state hospital systems, nursing care, long-term care, as well as her experience in managing various fiscal budgets there with ks and Scott Brenner. So again, we're very indebted to her and thank her very much for what she's bringing to our organization. If I may, just a brief introduction again, that I came on board here in August. Previously, I had served in the United States Army for a little over 30 years. I come from a family of folks that had served in the military, in the Marine Corps, in the Army. I have nephews and nieces that have served in the Army, the Air Force. And so it is truly an honor, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity to be able to continue to give back. I just recently retired, relatively speaking, in February of 2018 from the Army when we're serving at Fort Riley. And this certainly offers a different perspective, if you will, for me, kind of dealing with the things that I was working with and the soldiers and the systems and the airmen, Marines, sailors I was working with in various joint environments. It's one thing to serve with folks on active duty in uniform, and it's another thing to come out and to be able to serve this population of folks, of the veterans that, across a broad spectrum that has served a number of capacities, some for a few years, some for a lifetime, and but all have offered up their services to our nation. So it's truly an honor to be able to do that. Again, as I'd like to, in the discussion here this morning, and I know that you are busy with a number of legislation here that you're trying to work through and study for and prepare for. So again, thank you for the opportunity to do this. But in your packets, you do have our report that is the annual report that we have put together that kind of more comprehensively looks at our organization, our agency, across all the various programs, from our veteran services to our state veterans homes, to the cemeteries program. And I think you can be able to kind of see that. I know when you have an opportunity to look at that more closely, we'll be happy to have discussions with any folks that would like to do so, and we can continue on with that. And then also in your packet, you will see there's a chart there, and this is kind of an operational campaign design that we have. This is an initial draft, if you will, of a kind of a direction, campaign strategy, if you will, that we would like to use to shape our efforts going forward. And I'll get a little bit more into that here in a few moments here toward the end. There have been a number of good things that have been happening here that we are able to occur during that last year, going from July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 21. It has been a challenging environment. We are continuing to deal with the various challenges associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and the various strains that continue to affect our organization. Certainly this has affected, out in the state veterans homes. It does put a tremendous strain on the nursing staffs out there, the registered nurses, the LPNs, the CNAs, the administrative staffs are having to manage and oversee this and to balance being able to perform all the responsibilities and duties that these folks have to take care of the residents in each of those homes. But again, they have weathered this very well. I'm very proud of the folks that are out there leading those organizations, that they've been able to balance that and to safely and securely take care of our residents. They have done really, truly an outstanding job of doing that. They've mitigated the risk greatly that's associated with the COVID environment. There was a period of time there where our residents, the census out there at the various locations had dwindled to a degree based on our inability to accept additional admissions to the state homes. But then now, I think as we've gotten this more under control and we have the systems and processes in place to be able to help mitigate the effects, we have seen kind of a stabilization of the census there. And so we've maintained an average in the aggregate between the two homes of somewhere around 160 residents between the two, about 75 in one of the state homes there and about 85 in the other. And it's been kind of bouncing back and forth, probably between 155 and 165 now since I've been on board here for the last 6 months. And we continue to exercise outreach to the max extent possible to continue to invite others to come and be able to take advantage of this benefit for our veterans and their families. Most recently, we have been able to experience there was the salary and wage increases that were put into place here in mid-December. That has served as a great resource for us to help stabilize our workforce. And that's been immensely helpful to us being able to do that. And then to also, as we move forward, to help us to retain and recruit new members on board to continue in our system. So early on, we are seeing the effects of that. We have hired a couple of nurses, registered nurses at each location, as well as a couple of our certified nurse assistants. So we are seeing kind of the effects of that, the ripple effect of being able to hire some much needed folks there to do that. Because what we end up enduring here is this reliance that we have on our temp agencies that exist out in those environments. And you all are very, very, I'm sure, very familiar with that. The hours, when I had first gotten here, were probably we're averaging about 60% of our organic staff were the ones that were attributing the hours each week, but then the other 40% were probably attributed to temp staff agency that were having to fill in for folks that were calling in that were not able to report for their work that day, or that had fallen ill and that we were having to take necessary precautions to make sure that they were being taken care of. And then, of course, each time that happens, if we do have folks that come down with COVID, if any resident, then we have to establish, a separate COVID facility, if you will, inside of that state veterans home, which requires dedicated staff that work there, that are taking care of them, and that only work in that area to try to make sure that we isolate that illness and that piece there. I hope that my bald head here doesn't have the reflection there, doesn't cause problems. But yeah, again, that is kind of the major challenge out there in the human resources realm out the state veterans homes, is being able to balance getting those critical care folks into the facility, and then balancing what money, what contracts that we have to pay out to those temp agencies. But again, we have seen some stabilization of that, again, with the salary wage increases and our ability to hire on more permanent staff to stay there. It won't absolutely eliminate the need for the temp agencies, and we'll continue to have to leverage that. But we are seeing somewhat of a reduction in that. We're probably closer right now to the 65-35 split, kind of and going in that direction in terms of our reliance, 35% of it on the temp agency piece. With regard to the VSRs, the Veteran Service Representatives right now, that is a major, I think, major good thing that is happening here within the state, that we have 19 Veteran Service Representatives that are identified that work around the state at various locations. And you can see the numbers in the report there, but between them and the folks that we leverage with the VCAP program, with the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion, who just do tremendous work for us, for our veterans across the state, that basically produces somewhere around, so like $202 million a year for our veterans here in the state, which ultimately, are dollars that are getting returned to our Kansas economy, which that is very much a win for the state. These folks are doing great work. Now, they have been, for a large part of the year, have been working from home, and have done all that they can to reach out and make contact in a number of ways, exercising all the various social media that they can and other means to help make sure they make themselves accessible to the veteran population. But we look forward to just being able to expand our capabilities there as we go out and reach out more within the communities. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the future, and we talk about things that we would like to do here moving down the road. Our cemeteries program right now, we do have the 4 cemeteries. We recently hired a Miss Heidi Goff that is now the cemeteries director. She's located out in Waukene up in Northwest, but she is constantly has positioned herself at various places in the cemetery's footprint, if you will, to make herself available to be at the different locations where she needs to be at the critical time and place to oversee those operations. So she's been doing outstanding work for us there as well, overseeing that. You can read in the report there, I believe our internments is up about 50 from the last year, up over 390. So that is continuing to work. And then she's having to deal with, over the last year, and up until she was hired on, Eric was predominantly was leading that effort. But over the past year, kind of dealing with the challenges of gathering folks together, they're out there to do that. But them, coupled with our National Guard partners and the active duty partners that we have in McConnell and Fort Leavenworth and Fort Riley, they've been able to continue to provide dignified and respectful services, memorial services for our veterans and their families. So again, likewise, we are very, very proud of that. One of the major initiatives there, if you will, or major operations that we're working on is a new columbarium wall that is being placed down in Winfield. The groundbreaking for that was in November of 2021. And it is to establish a 1,280 niche capability down there wall to add to what capabilities they already have there. The current resources that we have there are probably due to run out somewhere around the May-June timeframe based on what we were seeing for the trends because this is kind of a newer trend that's gaining more momentum, is the intent on using the columbarium wall for the final interment. But we're looking at probably being able to run out of our capabilities there in the June, July timeframe, May, June, July. And so with this groundbreaking, we were expecting it to be done in June. Now with the good weather and the great work that's being done there by the construction team and under the supervision of Heidi, they've been able to kind of accelerate their work there. And we expect it to be done in March. And then the final landscaping pieces will be done in April, and we'll be doing a ribbon cutting in April down in Winfield, probably the latter part of April. As we get more details and can refine that, we'll make sure that the word is out to all the members of your committee. So we invite everybody to come attend that as they are able and willing to do that. But we're very excited about that because it's being done like that by April. We expect there will be no lapse in our services to the veterans that are desiring the columbarium wall use down there in Winfield. So as we kind of and then transfer over here, kind of going forward again, I would like to, if you moment, I'll make a few more comments here related to this, but I'd like to, if I may, is just to kind of refer to our chart here. From this, I think everybody has this chart in your packets. Fairly simplified chart, probably nothing necessarily terribly revolutionary, but I would like to have you know that we did convene a group kind of internally, and we brought in some folks externally to help kind of look at our organization and provide us some insights and guidance and thoughts about how we were running operations and where we thought we needed to weigh our efforts. And if you will, kind of the way you read this, if I may, to orient you in this plan, is if you look to the far left of the chart, you'll see our mission. And our mission there, and I'll just go ahead and read this off for folks that are online and what have you, is to honor Kansas veterans and eligible family members by creating and sustaining an environment in which our veterans can thrive as valued, contributing members of the Kansas community. So very important that we are trying to set the conditions here within our organization, working with across the various federal and state and private partner agencies that we can to help build that environment, if you will. Then moving over to the center portion, these are what we kind of characterize as our 4 primary lines of effort. And so starting at the top, you can see it's kind of a double arrow there, and that's really to signify that's what our primary effort is. And that is in terms of probably the human capital that we invest there, the revenue that we have to put there. This is where we end up putting most of our resources into right now within our agency, is providing that quality healthcare and professionalism to serve our veterans in our state veterans homes and assist them with those health benefits that they get there, and to be able to adapt that as needed. So probably upward of 80% of our budget, of our aggregated budget, if you will, and our resources go to the homes of our FTE. The next line down is about, I would call that a close second line of effort there in terms of priorities, is our ability to assist veterans and their families in obtaining the benefits that they are entitled to. And this is about, our veteran service representatives. This is about outreach programs. This is about working with others to help kind of bring awareness of those benefits that our veterans are entitled to reach out to them proactively, make contact, and assist them. Kind of by backtracking a moment, our Veteran Services Group, they probably make contact with over 40,000 veterans, 40,000 appointments throughout the year between ourselves, our representatives from the VFW and the American Legion. It's probably over about 40,000 contacts. And what that generates, you'll see in the report, there's about 6,000 claims that were done there that provide benefits in terms of their pension and compensation that they receive back from federal Veterans Administration. So when you see a number on there, it's like 6,092 claims, that really is nested within a number of about 40,000 contacts. And the claims are just one portion of what these folks do. I mean, there's a number of other services that they provide, assisting these veterans in a number of ways with their insurance, with helping them with letters, helping them to make these policies go. So probably on average, they spend anywhere from 2 to 3 hours with a given veteran, working through whatever challenge, issue, concern that they may have and ways that we can assist them. And then they have to probably devote about another 2.5 or 3 hours outside of that direct contact, researching and putting together the necessary case that they need to help aid those veterans. So again, very, very big effort there that we do here for the state. Also kind of nested with that is, because I go back on this, is there's about 196,000, and I kind of loosely say that I suspect there are probably many more than that, 196 veterans in the state of Kansas. And when you consider that each of those veterans have associated dependents and family members with them, that's probably another 150 to 200,000 family members or dependents that are associated with that each individual veteran. So you're talking about upward of about 400,000 veterans and family members in the state of Kansas that are affected by these things that we are doing out there. So it is critical what they're doing. So now you're talking, upward of probably more of the 12 to 15% of the amount of residents here in the state. So it is a huge influence, a huge impact what they're doing, and we're very grateful for that. Number 3, the line of effort there is about advocating for veterans. It says military installations, service members, and families. And this is where we largely partner with the Governor's Military Council and Lieutenant General retired Perry Wiggins that runs that. So we've been working together as we go about trying to look at various initiatives and legislation and other programs that we can help with there to help with the needs of the folks, the veterans, but then also those that are serving on active duty at those installations. So as we, you kind of look at line of effort 2, assisting the veterans and advocating for the veterans, these kind of closely merge in some ways there as we look at how do we help transitioning veterans, airmen, soldiers that are coming out of, Fort Riley, Leavenworth, McConnell. How do we reach out to them to ensure that they are all registered with us, that they're getting the needs and the benefits that they are entitled to? And then the final line of effort down there is about integrating and synchronizing the effects. And I know that Representative Proctor and General Dotson can kind of relate to this, is the being a field artilleryman in the Army, and kind of looking at one of our primary responsibilities and duties that we did serving in the Army was about how do we integrate and synchronize fires, be it lethal, non-lethal, out in the, in a combat zone, if you will. So I look at it kind of from that perspective in terms of how does the Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs, how do we help to take charge of all these various entities? There's a number of groups across our state, again, that are doing wonderful things for our veterans, but how do we help kind of gain some visibility on these and to make sure that we have a plan whereby we are touching all the different areas, that we're not leaving areas unattended to, that we're getting the right resources out at the right location at the right time to be able to address the needs of the veterans in that area. And how do we do this? I mean, I'd like to be able to establish work groups, and I've talked to the secretaries here in the state, as well as some of the other agency directors, and how do we bring together various entities that have efforts that are focused in the veterans area. For example, in the Department of Commerce and CanVets and what they're doing out there to work with various organizations to help with employment opportunities and enhancing the job skills of transitioning soldiers. And then how do we broaden that to the broader veteran community across the state to make these various capabilities, available to them to be able to help grow and to have these opportunities as well. So that's kind of one part of that. Also working with the Federal Veterans Benefits Administration, the regional representative. It's located down in Wichita, and she has been interested in helping to partner with us to provide resources that we can kind of surge at different areas, at different locations, again, at the right time, where we can optimize these resources going out with them, with various resources from the Veterans Administration, hospital systems in Topeka, Leavenworth, and Wichita, and then with ourselves, with our veteran service representatives and our mobile capabilities to be able to go out to different locations, again, to help kind of broaden the awareness out there to the communities at chambers of commerce, at various other civics groups, and to help just kind of get that word out and to make ourselves available so that they see us. Again, a lot of the things that are going on with the veterans become transparent because they're not wearing a uniform. They're not always readily seen. Occasionally you see folks that are wearing hats or they're wearing various paraphernalia that identify them as veterans, but oftentimes we don't. And there's so many that are living amongst us or families or friends of veterans in their communities that know and that can help get the word out to them. And so the more that we're able to engage with them and do that, the better. And then ultimately down there at the bottom, it talks about informing and educating the public. And that's where I kind of talk about outreach and information operations, resources. How do we do that? And that's really something that really influences all four of these lines of effort. You have to have a good system by which we're able to do that and to communicate what we are doing so that folks understand that. And then you can see the vision out to the right again is about providing outstanding service to all of our veterans and eligible family members, enabling them with the right information, advice, and guidance and understanding of the various statutes and regulations so that we can make Kansas the best place where folks want to come work, retire, live their lives, raise their families. So there's tremendous opportunities and potential there. So as we look to the future and some of the things we want to do, a key aspect of that, as I talked about, was this ability to kind of integrate and synchronize our efforts so that we can focus the resources that we have from across various agencies to go after some of these things, be it having to do with employment opportunities, job skills, homelessness, suicide prevention. There's a number of entities that are doing this, but sometimes we find out too late. Sometimes it may not be going in at the right location where we most need it, where we can help prioritize that. And by working with that regional director down in Wichita, we're able to gain a visibility on where veterans are located in the state, which ones have actually reached out and we have contact with, those that we don't, how many have service-connected disabilities and the like and all that. So that'll be a major win for us. Looking aside and kind of setting aside somebody that can be kind of that director of operations to help coordinate that and run that while we have other folks that are out trying to establish these outreach connections is a critical priority for me doing this in our organization. One last thing that I will touch on is that, as many of you all know, and from the last session here was, excuse me, was the initiation of the project to begin the initial application for a federal grant for the Northeast Kansas Veterans Home. And right now, we had reached out on 1 October and had published a request for proposals for the site selection. We do have 6 site selections that have come in now that are being under consideration. We are continuing to work through some of the details for that and reaching out to various folks that have submitted proposals to get the final data that we need there, some things with topographics, utilities, and some of the other things there with the land, to make sure that these locations can receive and facilitate what we have going on. We have retained an architectural design team, so we do have a very detailed and we're concept design, if you will, for our facility, and I'm happy to share that with you all for those that are interested. And you can kind of see how that would overlay. And so once we get all that information in, we are convening a panel of folks that are representatives from various agencies across the state here, from KDADS and the state hospital system, from KDHE with one of their deputy secretaries, the governor's military council representative, the architectural design team, one of our superintendents of our state veterans homes, and myself. We will have established criteria for this. We will vet that with the panel to make sure we think we have the right criteria before we move forward. And then at that point, once we do that, we will go ahead and release all the various proposals to them for review and study and assessment, come back together, vote that per the criteria that we've agreed to, and I'll be prepared then with a recommendation on that moving forward. Another is regarding the criteria. A lot of the criteria is focused primarily on things such as the veterans demographics and where they are at here within the area in that northeast quadrant. Where do we have kind of the predominance of folks that we want to service, and not just kind of the overarching number of veterans, but also those that have service-connected disabilities, those that are 70% or higher or have various needs that we anticipate that we can help with this veterans homes. We look at transportation and accessibility to the various sites and how families and other folks can move in and out and to get there. We look at the workforce availability in terms of the critical care nurses. I've talked to the Board of Nursing here, and they've given us some data on where they have right now licensed nurses across the state, so I can see where kind of the concentration and the focus of those folks are, because obviously we want to, mitigate the risk there, the challenge of having qualified people to do the work that we need. And then another one is also kind of access to various healthcare facilities that can provide services outside of what our nursing teams will be able to provide in the home. So as we need to kind of outsource some services for our veterans there, we'll be able to have easy accessibility there. So that's not all inclusive. There's certainly things to do with cost and the land size and the various other pieces I talked about with the topography and the utilities and other things like that. But those are kind of the major core criteria that we're looking at when we go about making our decision. So probably have rambled on here long enough. And again, there's a pretty comprehensive report, I think, that provides you some data on the various programs. And I'll pause there, sir, for any questions you may have. Thank you very much again for the opportunity. And again, it's really been a privilege to be with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. And I'd like to say, before we get started with questions, that's about as informative and thorough a presentation I've heard on veteran services in my 8 years in this committee. And I really appreciate it. You're really doing a good job, I can tell by that. With that, I'll open it up for questions. Yes. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Who would be the point of contact on the veterans home within your agency, the best person for me to reach out to?
For the new veterans home, sir?
Yes, sir.
Right now, I guess kind of our action officer is Mr. Dave Smith, who is our superintendent out at our Dodge facility. But within our agency, primarily it's myself and a Miss Barb Schilling from the Director of Administration that are between the three of us who are kind of leading that. From an administrative perspective, from helping to work all the pieces administratively, it's probably Barbara and myself. And then Dave has been kind of the one that's helping to make sure that we are providing all the services within the new home to help make sure that we're transferring all the things that we need into the new home.
Well, I'm absolutely sure you're doing. This is to help me because I'm trying to share that as I go out into the community. One of the co-sponsors, and this is so important, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Riz.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very thorough. I really appreciate this other handout that you've given us and the breakdown between the number of women veterans and, of course, the number of male veterans. It's a really nice breakdown. Is it possible to also do another breakdown with race and ethnicity? For Kansas veterans, especially when you're looking at the Northeast. We're more diverse out in the Northeast, and so I'm just kind of wondering what that breakdown might be. And also per congressional district. That's also very nice to have provided that.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. Might have to give me a few days here, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric has been running all that for us largely, but we can get that data. And again, the regional director down in Wichita has been very helpful from the VA perspective, helping us to see ourselves that way.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an exceptional report, Mr. Turner. I appreciate this quite a bit. With the retirement of Pat Roberts, our federal delegation has lost a lot of direct experience with the veterans and military, although we're very well supported by our federal delegation. I'd like you to be aware that the VA has a VA supremacy project that will nationalize credentialing among healthcare providers in a state like ours, where non-physicians are not allowed to perform surgery. That ability could be enforced on Kansas VAs. So it's of great concern to me. I'm an eye surgeon by background. But I wonder what, I didn't hear too much about your interface with our federal delegation, and I wondered if you could address that for the Kansas Commission.
Sir, I've had brief touch points with the federal delegation, and that is one of the things that I am, as I kind of grow in this, reaching out to them and to do that. Most of what I've been doing here initially in the first 60 to 90 days was focused kind of internally and getting to learn our organization, being able to go across the state, seeing the various facilities that we have and the people that are dispersed throughout there doing that. But I will be doing that as well, sir.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir, for being here today. It's kind of special for me, having served with you a couple times, to be serving with you again. So thank you for your sacrifice to serve our state. My first question, I know you can't give us like the specifics of the different bids, but could you at least give us a kind of a ballpark of what are the locations? Like, I mean, are we looking at Johnson County, Leavenworth County? Where are we looking at that the concentration of these bids are from?
Sir, I guess without going into too great detail, we've been blessed that we have a distribution of bids that have stretched from way out from west in the Geary County area, northward up toward Clay Center, and then over to the east, and then just north and south, basically that I-70 corridor. So it does stretch the breadth of that area of the northeast quadrant.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, if I could, one more question. I appreciate what you said about synchronizing fires, right? Like bringing in all of these other veteran service organizations that are also doing incredible work for our veterans every day. I was wondering, would it be possible to have any kind of representation from any of those veteran service organizations on this panel that's deciding about this veterans home? I mean, I appreciate that you're going to have the governor's military committee, but really you've got an executive branch panel right now. And I wonder if there's any way to expand the aperture a little bit and get some of those folks that are actually on the ground doing that work with veterans every day and get their voices into that panel.
Yes, sir. I mean, I certainly take that into consideration. We have reached out, I think, to a number of groups and being able to kind of get feedback from folks. So that was kind of I think that was a lot of that was done in the beginning in terms of trying to provide that assessment of what were they looking for in the homes, what were they looking for in locations, and that's kind of what that certainly narrowed it to that northeast quadrant, as you are well familiar with. But I will absolutely look into that as well. Thank you.
Further questions? Yeah, Representative Dodson.
Yeah, Bill, you and I have talked a little bit, and I know there's a few challenges with staffing and so on coming in, and most of those have been pretty much solved with great people. As we move forward, let's say into the next 6 months to a year, what are the kind of obstacles that you see that you might need help with from this panel or others? I mean, are there things we can do to help from here, or have we gotten that far yet?
Sir, I think as part of the budget recommendations that were made right now, we are looking at opportunities to help establish some positions within our organization to help us kind of better organize ourselves to do some of the things we're talking about in terms of that outreach. They include everything from an IT and information technology individual to help manage our information systems to an information operations outreach person to help manage with social media, news media, to help to reach out and also connect with a legislative liaison to be able to make sure we're keeping our fingers on the pulse of what's going on here and how can we help that way. And then an operations officer, if you will, that will help us to kind of organize what we're talking about here in these developments of a predictable battle rhythm and working groups. So that's the part there as I try to gain a consensus across the various state agencies and the various organizations across the state. How do we bring them together in some predictable manner? Like I said, if it's a work group and a predictable battle rhythm, if you will, where we have sessions set up and we're focused on addressing very specific areas, like I said, be it homelessness, education, employment opportunities and to bring the right people together in the room and to do that. So the more that we can kind of help, I think, increase the chatter there with that across the state and being able to reach out and talk to these various, because there are a number of veterans service organizations out there and charitable groups that are assisting veterans, so that I think I have a pretty good grasp of what goes on. I live in Manhattan right now, and so I understand well, I think the various groups in Junction City and the Manhattan area, Fort Riley, the greater Flint Hills area, but I don't have as much visibility awareness of those that are outside of that. And I'm trying to reach out and do that, sir.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Further questions? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Finch.
Thank you, sir, for being here today. Appreciate your testimony. I should know this already. I'm sure I've heard it in the past. What is your funding stream for your organization? Does it come out of state general funds?
Sorry, it does. I mean, we do. There's a number of different funding streams. I know that we receive various monies from the lottery piece. Again, I'm just kind of learning about, I guess, through a proviso that's in effect right now. Probably, I mean, there is some predictability there, but in the long term, there's not as much predictability as we may desire. We do have the state government funds, as you described. We do receive the Veterans Administration dollars, federal dollars, and Medicaid and Medicare to support our operations out at the homes. So of our budget probably ranges somewhere around in the aggregate of $28 million, and somewhere around $6 million is what we receive from SGF, but that is augmented with these other funding streams. And then we also, in the cemeteries, I would be remiss, we do get plot allowances out there as well. So that largely kind of helps self-drives that operation. The plot allowance money is somewhere around $800 per veteran that is interred in one of our facilities. It does not apply to family members, though, or dependents, just strictly for the veteran. But so those are our primary funding streams.
I saw on your expenses, I didn't see anything referencing your cemeteries. What's the cost of doing that?
Sir, I want to say our expenditure is somewhere around the $500,000 to $600,000 a year there in the maintenance and upkeep of those facilities, but I would owe you a better answer. I can get more detail on that and get that to you.
And one final question, one that Representative Collins probably should have asked. Have you evaluated the need of a cemetery down in the southeast part of the state?
The deed, sir, I have not, sir.
Down in the Pittsburgh area?
Sir, I have not. This is my first time learning about that. Yes, sir.
Representative Collins might have a further.
Well, actually, we have the federal cemetery in Fort Scott, so we're covered there as far as veterans cemeteries go.
That's a good point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions? Seeing none. Mr. Turner, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And that's about as thorough of informational presentation I've heard on Veterans Affairs in my 8 years in this committee. So I really appreciate it. And if there's anything this committee can do to help, assist, ideas, let us know, and we'll certainly be honored to have you back.
Sir, thank you very much. And again, I owe a great deal of thanks to the folks that support us. Like I said, there's a number of folks there, the core group, from the two superintendents, from Mr. Peel, Mr. Smith, and then Ms. Goff at the cemeteries, and then with Eric and Crystal, and then our human resource manager. We have an acting human resource manager, Mr. Drost, that's out working from Dodge right now. The previous human resource director had over 40 years of experience, 40 years with our organization, and did tremendous work, was a Miss Kim Tatum, and just did phenomenal work. So you can see there's some of this overturn where with myself and some of these new individuals kind of with our central staff, we are definitely a growing learning organization right now. And so I appreciate all the support that I've received from them, and then from all your folks, sir, and all the various other veteran service organizations that have helped us here across the state. So thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. And thank you once again. Committee, I've got a couple of housekeeping things that we need to do. I didn't want to hold up Mr. Turner while we waited on the forum of our group to get here. But are there any introductions of bills? Seeing none. We have approval of the minutes of the last meeting. I don't know if those were sent out. Carol, were they not? Everybody should have had a chance to look at them. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved by Representative Johnson, seconded by Representative Dodson. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. With that, any ideas, interests, questions from the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.